You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 13th of November 2024 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting to you live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Georgina Godwin. Coming up on today's programme...
I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, you want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike and you say, that's okay, you're all gone. You're all gone. So every one of you is gone and you are the greatest. You would be very good. Oh, you would love it.
Donald Trump, the US president-elect, follows up on his promise to make Elon Musk his efficiency tsar, or should that be redundancy director? We'll ask how the appointment of loyalists might affect the running of the country. Then to Amsterdam to examine how the violence surrounding a football match between an Israeli and a local team unfolded. Plus...
I am profoundly honoured to announce that the winner of the Booker Prize 2024 is Samantha Harvey for Orbital.
We'll speak to a judge from the Booker Prize to hear more about the winning book. And we'll find out how residents of Helsinki celebrate Finland's greyest day. And finally, Google searches by Americans on how to move abroad have surged. If the thought of Elon Musk joining Donald Trump in the White House is just too much for you, we'll hear how you can plan your escape. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Georgina Godwin. The US President-elect Donald Trump has begun choosing people to fill key posts in his government. They're all loyalists, and while some bring expertise in their given area, others have no experience of government at all. Well, Elizabeth Braw is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, and she joins me now. Elizabeth, Elon Musk is obviously the most high-profile person announced so far. What will his role be?
His role will be to increase government efficiency, and that wouldn't ordinarily be such a surprising task for a new government to take on. I think every government comes into office thinking we'll be much more efficient than the previous government, but appointing somebody like Elon Musk, who feels very strongly that the government is too big, doesn't just have too many officials, but has too wide-ranging powers. That is certainly an unorthodox appointment, and especially since he is still active in business, and the U.S. government, one of the U.S. government's functions is to regulate business.
Elizabeth, stay with me. I'd like to bring in Craig Trudell now, who's global automotive editor at Bloomberg. Craig, Musk is known for, as Elizabeth says, running businesses, X, formerly Twitter, SpaceX, and the electric car manufacturer Tesla. What's his track record in running Tesla?
I mean, I think you can both acknowledge that he's done a lot of pretty brilliant things and impressed a lot of people along the way, particularly at Tesla and SpaceX. But he's also quite a chaotic leader. We've seen just in the last few years, him sort of deciding seemingly on a whim at times to just sort of summarily dismiss people at his companies. You saw him do that as soon as he took over Twitter. You've seen him do that actually earlier this year, even at Tesla, which is, a company that's in much better financial shape. But he'll sort of go overboard in firing people, and then in a matter of days ask some of those same people to come back to his company. So he's a very aggressive, manager, and I've heard him actually describe himself not just as a micromanager, but a nano manager. And so for him to sort of subject the U.S. government to that level of scrutiny is going to be something that we haven't seen before, that sort of goes beyond, what we've already talked about, just the fact that he's doing so from the position of someone who, runs 6 companies as well.
I mean, there have been accusations, haven't there, of some sort of malpractice and wrongdoings within Tesla.
Yeah, you played some tape off the top there. It was kind of a strange comment that Donald Trump made, where he referred to people going on strike and Musk saying, okay, that's fine, you're gone. The reason I say that that's strange is because people don't go on strike at his companies because he doesn't allow them to unionize. So it is true that to the extent that he's had people kind of stand up to him at his companies, he's dismissed them sort of out of hand. But he absolutely has been a major critic of unions, and that audio that you played off the top was something that the United Auto Workers tried to sort of seize on right away. The UAW union that represents a lot of Detroit automaker workers really tried to throw its weight behind Kamala Harris, obviously to no avail.
Tesla's stocks have surged since the election. Of course, that benefits Musk financially. I wonder if a position in government would be a conflict of interest, given that obviously he'd then be in a position to influence policy, including regulations around electric vehicles.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is a conflict of interest. I think, Tesla gets regulated from quite a few, angles. Some of them, by the way, I should note, are quite, positive regulation for Tesla, in that you think about the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They set fuel economy standards that, when those are made more stringent, Tesla benefits, because manufacturers who don't comply with those rules have been paying Tesla for years for regulatory credits to sort of make up for their inability to comply. But there are other regulators that that oversee this safety. I mentioned the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They oversee rules around automated vehicles, and I think there's quite a lot of attention around Musk potentially trying to change those rules to make it easier for him to get to market.
Craig, thank you. Elizabeth, back to you. I mean, just the fact that this really could be in breach of all sorts of regulations, having someone like Musk in there who could benefit personally. Does Trump even care when you look at his attitude to the other legal woes bothering him? He doesn't seem to mind, and in fact, nor do his voters.
That is the reality, and that's why Trump is so strong today. He has already been through this. He has been through since 2016, even 2015, saying things that people thought were over the top, doing things that people thought were beyond the pale, and yet nothing happened. He went on to win the 2016 election and went on to say things that people considered outrageous and do things that people considered outrageous, including, for example, walking away from various international treaties. But he has proven that you can do so, both in word and in deed, and get away with it, as it were. He would say, well, I'm within my rights to say and do what I like. And now he's proving that there is nothing much that anybody can do about it. And I think that's why this administration is so difficult to figure out for America's friends and foes alike, because you just never know what Trump is going to say or do. And now with a maverick like Elon Musk in partial charge of the U.S. government, that is even more the case. Now, Elon Musk obviously won't be in charge of foreign policy, but nevertheless, he will have a very strong voice within this administration.
And I mean, there are many concerning figures. Just to pick out one, Elise Stefanik has been nominated as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Now, she's been a critic of the UN. So, I mean, there are many, many such appointments like this. What concerns you most? The near complete disdain within MAGA land of multilateral institutions and multilateral cooperation. And it may sound boring to talk about multilateral cooperation, but in international politics, as in real life for us ordinary citizens, it does matter whether you have friends. It does matter whether you work together. And yes, you may be the strongest and feel that you don't need to work with anybody else, but the time will come when you will need others. And who is going to be there for you if you have shown such disdain
over a long period of time, and I think that's will be America's problem, and it is indeed the problem with America first. Trump may make some decisions that will turn out to solve problems in a way that Biden never succeeded, because Biden just he was in a way. He turned out to be more passive than people had hoped and expected. But even if you take those potential positive outcomes into account, America having not operating on the basis of friendship and good relations with other countries, it can only end badly for America and indeed for other countries.
Elizabeth, when we're looking at things like USAID facing huge cuts, as is the Department of State, when we're looking at huge loyalists filling key posts, I wonder what this means for a neutral civil service. And if there will be any guardrails in place, will this be an administration completely compliant to the whims of Donald Trump?
There are legal guardrails for civil servants in the US as indeed in the UK and elsewhere. But what civil servants in the US, including the Foreign Service and the diplomatic corps, what they are not used to and will, I think, struggle to operate within is this environment of America becoming less sympathetic even towards its allies. How, as a diplomat, do you go about your job? Even if you're neutral, as you have to be as a diplomat, ideologically neutral. How do you go about building relations with other countries when your actions may be undermined and indeed may be totally contrary to the tone that is set at home? Now, Marco Rubio is not the most militant MAGA politician, but he will be serving in the MAGA administration. And as you said, Elise Stefanik is very vocal along the lines of MAGA world as articulated by Trump.
Elizabeth, thank you very much indeed. That's Elizabeth Braw there. We also heard from Craig Trudell. Now, here's Anita Riota with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Georgina. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken assured NATO allies the Biden administration will boost Ukraine support ahead of Trump's inauguration. Blinken also insisted the deployment of North Korean troops to Russia demands a firm response. Voters in Somaliland head to the polls today to elect a president. The breakaway region continues to seek international recognition after 3 decades of self-rule. The bidding war for Japan's Seven & I continues as a member of its founding family presented a staggering $58 billion offer. A rival offer from a Canadian company would instead mark the largest foreign takeover in Japan's history. Back to you, Georgina.
Thanks, Anita. Last week, there were horribly violent incidents in Amsterdam surrounding a Europa League football match between a local team and one from Israel. The crisis in the Middle East appears to have sparked both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic sentiments, and there seems to be blame on both sides. To help us understand what happened and why, I'm joined by Stefan de Vries, who's European Affairs correspondent at Euronews based in Amsterdam. Stefan, what happened the day before the match? That would have been last Wednesday evening.
Yeah, well, it's a very complicated situation. There were about 2,500 supporters of Maccabi Tel Aviv in Amsterdam to watch the match between Ajax and their club. And at that evening, there were already incidents with the Tel Aviv supporters. They were, for instance, removing Palestinian flags. There are many of those in Amsterdam. They were shouting at Arabic-looking people, and allegedly they also damaged some taxi cars. And police now say that the taxi drivers who were already having problems with the Maccabi fans on Wednesday night, they were passing on information to youngsters in Amsterdam by social media or by applications like Telegram and WhatsApp about places where supporters from Israel were walking around. And then there were quite a few incidents in the night of Thursday to Friday with young people on scooters. They had, more or less hit and run attacks, and several Israeli supporters were injured. 65 people were arrested that night, and also 10 people amongst those 65 were Israeli supporters. So it more or less started as a almost classical hooligan confrontation, you could say, but it turned quickly into what is now being called a Jew hunt in Amsterdam, a city that has suffered a lot of the Nazi occupation, where about 15% of the population were Jews. Almost nobody came back after the war. So it is a city that has a long standing heritage with its Jewish population. So it remembered a lot of people of the darkest pages of Amsterdam's history.
How did the authorities respond?
Well, there was a lot of police in the streets in Amsterdam, maximum capacity. There was no information from the secret services or the intelligence services that things could get out of hand. So from a police point of view, they were overwhelmed, but also because of the fact that the people, the youngsters, the suspects who beat up the Israelis were very mobile on scooters, riding around on throughout the city, arriving very quickly and leaving also very quickly. So the police didn't really have a tactic to combat these attacks, and the next day there was a lot of political comments, especially by the right, the extreme right, the populist government right now. Some leaders claiming that the mayor of Amsterdam should leave, should resign. And now, as we speak, there is a debate going on in the lower house of the Dutch parliament, where, for instance, Geert Wilders, the leader of the populist party PVV, is also demanding for the Amsterdam mayor to resign, although the parliament has no power to force her, but also to withdraw the Dutch nationalities of people who participated in, or what many people now call this Jew hunt on Thursday night. So the political situation has become very tense. The debate has become pretty poisonous because many parties are now pointing towards the immigration population of the Netherlands as a problem. So it really has a lot of impact on the Dutch politics. At the same time, the police is still investigating who were these people. No details about their identity are known right now. So politicians are really heating up the fire, trying to blame the left for what they see as a complete failure of their politics.
And in terms of the situation on the street, is it calm now?
Yes, it is calm. In general, Amsterdam is a very peaceful city. There were some riots on Monday night in the western part of the city. It is not clear whether there is a link with what happened last week. Also, since the war in Israel started, since the attacks of Hamas on the 7th of October last year, there are the city is under tension. There are many people protesting against what Israel is doing. They're pro-Palestinian. There have been quite a few incidents, mainly at the universities in the city. So there is a palpable tension in the city since the Hamas attacks last year. But in general, it is a quiet and peaceful city. So there have been no riots last night. The riot police, of course, is on high alert. But it seems that the calm has returned. But the tension is still there because of the war, of course, in Israel and in the Gaza, in Gaza.
Stefan, thank you very much indeed. That's Stefan de Vries there. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You're back with The Briefing on Monocle Radio. The Booker Prize is the world's most significant literary award for the best sustained work of fiction written in English and published in the UK or Ireland. The shortlist this year comprised of James by Percival Everett, Orbital by Samantha Harvey, Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner, Held by Anne Michaels, The Safekeep by Yale van der Woerden, and Stone Yard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. And last night I went along to the glittering ceremony at Old Billingsgate, where we heard from Edmund Duval, chair of the judges.
I am profoundly honoured to announce that the winner of the Booker Prize 2024 is Samantha Harvey for Orbital.
And here's some of what Samantha Harvey herself had to say in her acceptance speech.
I was not expecting that. It's fair to say that no Booker speech has ever been made in a perfect world, but it's hard to not acknowledge the imperfections of the world that we live in today. We are, as Carl Sagan said in his book Cosmos, the local embodiment of a consciousness grown to self-awareness. We are star stuff pondering the stars. And I would add that we are also earth stuff pondering the earth. And I think my novel is an exercise in that pondering. To look at the earth from space is a bit like a child looking into a mirror and realizing for the first time that the person in the mirror is herself. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. And what we do to life on earth, human and otherwise, we do to ourselves.
And that was Samantha Harvey, who has won the Booker Prize for 2024. Well, joining me on the line now is the writer and Booker Prize judge for this year, Yuyin Lee. Yuyin, tell us about Samantha's book, Orbital.
Yes, so I noticed that it's said it's the second shortest novel to have won Booker. It is short, but it is expansive. And we have, from the very beginning, realized how big the book is. It brings us to outer space. It brings us to philosophy, science, and poetry. So it's one of those books that I think, we're hoping will expand the readers across the board and around the globe, for us to see how big the world is, how small we are, and yet how connected we are in this big world.
It was a really strong shortlist, 5 women on that list. Tell us about the process of whittling it down from hundreds of books just to that one.
So we read 156 books from January to July, and it's quite a gruesome reading schedule, but I think the Booker Foundation did a good job just to keep us on target, on schedule every month. And we had monthly meeting to discuss every month's reading. And then by July, we had long list meeting. And then in September, we had short list meeting. And 2 days ago, we had the final judging meeting. So yes, so it was a year-long project of 5 people reading together and closely.
And was it a happy panel?
It was. I have been on many judging panels, and this is absolutely one of the most wonderful and collegial panels I've ever been on. Partly, I think, Edmund Duval is absolutely a wonderful chair, and everybody on the panel is a good listener. I think that's the most important thing for our panel is nobody is trying to dictate or dominate. We all listen to each other very closely, and we're open to changing our minds when we listen to each other closely.
Was it unanimous, the decision to award the prize to Orbital?
It was a unanimous decision. It was a very happily unanimous decision.
And finally, Yuyin, what does winning this prize mean, obviously for the author, but also for the publishing house?
Well, I think, someone else may be better speaking for that, but I imagine this is a good way for Samantha's book or for any winning book to be read across the, around the globe by millions of readers. And it's also just an important, I think that's what Booker Prize and means to me as a writer or to publisher is people care for literature, people read serious fiction. And that's not a small thing in this bleak world.
Absolutely. Yiyun, thank you very much indeed. That's Yiyun Lee there of the Booker Prize judging panel. And do keep an ear out for a new episode of Meet the Writers featuring Samantha Harvey coming soon. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Next, we head to Helsinki, which, according to the Finnish Weather Service, is Europe's gloomiest capital this time of the year. Despite the dreary weather, thousands of locals recently gathered to celebrate what the city of Helsinki calls the greyest day of the year. The celebrations are part of City Hall's attempts to bring joy to the dark and often rainy period between the autumn and the winter. Our correspondent Petri Bertsov took part in the celebrations, and he brings us this report.
November in Helsinki is a dreary month in terms of the weather. The beautiful amber autumn leaves have fallen and the daylight often fades after just a few hours. It's still a month or two before the winter magic arrives, bringing with it pure white snow and blue winter skies. Instead, November in Helsinki means slush, fog and rain. People call it the greyest month of the year, which is quite objectively true. So you would expect people to stay indoors, maybe under a blanket, light a candle and read a book. However, in a startling display of self-irony and that typical dry and deadpan Finnish sense of humor, the Helsinkians have begun to embrace the greyness. Last Saturday, over 8,000 people took part in the greyest day of the year celebrations on Helsinki's central Senate Square. The event was sponsored by a much-loved Finnish grapefruit and gin drink, Lonkero, known for its grey colour, of course. It was broadcast on national television, and similar celebrations took place all over the country, with pubs and bars hosting greyest day themed parties. People came dressed in colourful overalls, neon lights on their heads, to take part in the event that saw some of the country's biggest artists perform in celebration of greyness. The city of Helsinki took part too, not only by hosting the concert on its most visited square, but also by organizing a photo contest in which people were encouraged to send in their best photos, celebrating the monochromatic beauty of the grey Helsinki. I caught up with Helsinki's mayor Juhana Vartiainen and began by asking him about what advice he would give to his fellow Helsinkians during this dark and grey time of year.
Enjoy the greyness and give your eyes a rest. You can be in a Hammershøi painting without going to this Danish art museum. It's very nice to look at all these shades of all these 100 shades of grey, if I may say so. And frankly, I find this monochromatic Helsinki extremely beautiful.
What does it say about the Finns' character that this, that is on the surface a dull and a kind of a boring day, the greyest day of the year, is actually turned into a celebration? Because we have these other events. We have the slush, which is also taking place in the sort of the most dreadful period of the year when there's like slush and it's grey. But we celebrate it. We turn it into something positive. What does it say about Finns in general?
Well, there's a funny answer and a very serious answer. And the funny answer is that you have to be a bit ironic. We are very long way up north. This is the same latitude as Anchorage, Alaska. We are survivors, and we have a nice city life here. So why not make fun of it? Then in a deeper vein, these seasons are very strong in this part of the world. We have warm summers with a very short night. We have the fall, we have the spring. So this cycle of seasons is a big part of our internal landscape in here up north. So it's a big difference vis-a-vis, say, Singapore, where every day has the same temperature and same length of the day. Here, this cyclical pattern is really built into our mental framework. So we have Schubert's Winterreise. We speak of the fall and the spring in people's lives. So this is wonderful, and this is where we want to live.
Final question, Mayor Vartiainen. How will you personally celebrate the greyest day?
I'll have a long promenade, then I'll have a shot at my sauna at the residence, perhaps enjoy a great drink of grapefruit juice and gin.
For Monocle in Helsinki, I'm Petri Burtsov.
Liking the grapefruit juice with gin. Thank you very much to Petri. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. In the US, many people threatened to leave the country if Donald Trump won the election. Now this has come to pass, there have been a surge in internet searches by Americans looking to follow through and move abroad. But it's not so easy to pack up and start a new life elsewhere. One person who knows how to do this and now advises others is Seppi Tababian, who is the founder of She Hit Refresh, a consultancy which helps Americans move overseas. Seppi, many thanks for joining us. It's reported that Google's searches for Move to Canada surged 1,270% in the 24 hours after the US East Coast polls closed on Tuesday. Similar searches about moving to New Zealand climbed nearly 2,000%. Those for Australia jumped 820%. I mean, it's one thing researching it, it's another actually making the leap. How did you do it?
Thank you so much, Georgina. I made my leap in 2015 when I was 35 years young, as I like to say. And you're right, to move abroad is not easy. I actually had to take the route of teaching English because at the time it was a lot harder to move abroad than it is now. And so I moved to Spain to teach English for a year and then, define my path after teaching.
And what do you think the demographic of those wanting to move is? I mean, apart from being Democrats, is there a uniting factor?
Well, we're seeing a really big uptick in women who want to move abroad. I particularly work with women age 30 and over, and that is just a demographic that I've seen an increase over the years. I started working in this realm in 2017, and so the numbers have just been increasing. In fact, we've seen interest in a lot of our offerings and products, of 800% increase.
That's extraordinary. Do you think that that's anything to do with the fact that this has been described as one of the most misogynist elections ever in the history of the world?
I think so. I think definitely this is due to political factors and people being concerned about who's been elected. And a lot of women are afraid of their rights being taken away. But I would say also a lot of these seeds were planted post-pandemic when people were really thinking about what's important in life, right? And reevaluating things. And that coupled with the rise of remote work, it's never been easier to untether yourself. And there's so many more viable visas now, especially digital nomad visas that only really started in 2020 with Estonia leading the way.
So, I mean, you say it's much easier now. How should Americans begin the process?
Yes, well, I think there's a few things to be aware of. While it is easier than it used to be, it's definitely not easy because there's a lot of logistics involved. And so some of the key things people need to think about is one, get clear on what you want because a move abroad looks different to everyone. You need to figure out where your money's coming from and understand that you can't just move to another country, apply for a job there and get hired because you're going to need a visa. So find out what viable visa options you qualify for. And then also you got to do some mindset work because even if we have, the path to move abroad, a lot of us just get in our own way because making a big life change like this can feel scary and those limiting beliefs can hold us back.
Absolutely. Seppi, many thanks for joining us. And that was Seppi Tabibian. She's the founder of She Hit Refresh, and she can help you relocate, should you so wish to do. And that's it for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Vincent McAviney, our researcher was Sana Jamani, and our studio manager was Steph Chungu. The Briefing is back tomorrow at the same time. I'm Georgina Godwin. Thank you for listening.